Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Director General of the Islamic World Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, ICESCO, representative of the Ministry of Justice and Liberties, dear Deputy Director of CTED, Director Shen, Excellency Vice President for External Relations of the Naif Arab University for Security Studies, President of the National Council of Human Rights, ma'am, Secretary General of Public Ministry and Representatives, General Control of the Representative of the General Directorate for National Security, Kingdom of Morocco, Excellency and dear friend, President of the Moroccan Observatory on the Extremism and Violence, all protocol observed, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the United Nations Office for Counter-Terrorism Program Office in Rabat, I would like to start by thanking the Moroccan Observatory on Extremism and Violence and the Islamic World Educational for Education, Science and Culture, and their co-organizers for inviting us to attend and address these remarks to this high-level conference. It is indeed a privilege and a pleasure to participate in such an ambitious and well-thought program that will bring to discussion key issues when discussing countering violent extremism. For an audience such as the one gathered today, I am sure that it is obvious that terrorism remains a complex, context-specific, and dynamic tactic used by groups and continues to have an impact on international peace and security, regional stability, and human welfare and development. Even though the threat level has become significantly lower in some regions and other regions of the world, such as Israel and Gaza, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and key parts of Africa, the threat remains high and in some cases continues to grow. In the Middle East, Daesh and its affiliates continue to constitute a serious threat in conflict zones and neighboring countries. Daesh maintains an ambition to project a global threat and its focus on reconstituting and regaining lost capabilities, while Al-Qaeda is demonstrating strategic patience. I believe that we can also agree that the lack of activity does not mean lack of planning or an absence of threat. As instability and war in the Middle East threaten to expand, extremist groups in the region and around the world may seek to feed off the instability and further encourage recruitments, terrorist financing, and planning. In parts of Africa, the continued expansion of Daesh and affiliate groups, as well as the increasing level of violence and threats, remain deeply concerning. The Daesh affiliate in the Sahel is becoming increasingly autonomous. More attacks are taking place in Mali, as well as Burkina Faso and Niger. The confrontations between this group and Al-Qaeda affiliates in the region, coupled with the uncertain situation after the coup d'etat in Niger, present a complex and multifaceted challenge. These coups have led to more uncertainty, and therefore the Sahel region is of a heightened concern to the international community. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, attacks by terrorists and other armed groups have also risen, and continued clashes between government forces and terrorist groups in the eastern region of the country. Some 500 persons have perished due to terrorist violence. Conflict and instability in Sudan have also renewed the attention on the presence and activity of Daesh and other terrorist groups in that country. So this complex picture remains despite successful counter-terrorism initiatives by member states. There have been progresses in targeting Daesh's finances and leadership cadres, including the death of Daesh leader earlier this year, confirmed by Daesh itself after the report's completion. These measures had a notable effect on the group's operations in Iraq and in Syria and Arab Republic, as well as elsewhere. Counter-terrorism initiatives in Egypt, Mozambique, and Yemen have also significantly limited the ability to conduct operations. Yet, the risk of resurgence remains. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my brief remarks here want to focus on education, on building capacities, and through that, reforming institutions and their approach to the challenge that they face in each country, their region, and their ability to contribute to the international effort of fighting terrorism. This conference chose to highlight the power of knowledge on countering violent extremism. This will bring discussions around the artificial intelligence, behavioral sciences, and the importance of continuing the research to better understand the full cycle of radicalization to extremism, the resource to violence, but also how to counter it, how to work on the individuals, but most importantly on the societies and groups to both prevent and counter violent extremism through grow and to harm us as much as it has been harming us for so long. I would like to leave some generic observations for this gathering's consideration and then refer to the importance of education as part of the knowledge toolkit that all the counter-violent extremism stakeholders should focus on. From educating our youth through peers and the right influencers to state actors, particularly those who are meant to uphold and enforce law and justice. First, compliance with international law, particularly international human rights law and humanitarian law, remains the essential bedrock for the success of counterterrorism efforts. This has to be said always, this has to be taught in a cross-cutting fashion. Actions that contravene these legal obligations only undermine global and local efforts against terrorism at any level. Effective counterterrorism requires inclusive approaches and gender-responsive measures. Second, the persistent challenges posed by terrorism underline the need for counterterrorism initiatives to be firmly grounded in political strategies for resolving the conflicts that fuel terrorism the most, and force alone cannot lead to changes in the conditions conducive to terrorism. I believe there is an American saying that goes, when the only tool that you have is a hammer, all your problems seem like a nail. Indeed, the use of force with no backing of clear strategy and not anchored on international law and rule of law, on respectful citizen-centered institutions, on strategic communications, and an efficient non-military whole-of-society approach can be counterproductive, fueling more violence, aggravating grievances exploited by terrorists, and creating conditions conducive to the proliferation of terrorist groups. Successful counterterrorism operations in some countries and subregions have limited terrorists' capabilities and affected their operations. However, the risk of resurgence, as I mentioned, remains, particularly if military-centered responses are not part of broader political strategies, anchored on the international law that I have just mentioned. In this regard, the UN Secretary General and his policy brief on a new agenda for peace has called for a new generation of counterterrorism operations, led by, in particular, African partners with Security Council mandate under Chapters 7 and 8 of the UN Charter, with guaranteed funding through assessed contributions. These operations should align with the full range of the United Nations tools and mechanisms for responding to crisis, which leads to prevention. The nature of the threat underscores the need for more complementary between security responses and preventive measures. Further efforts are required to prioritize and significantly increase investment in prevention efforts. The integrated and balanced implementation of the 4 pillars of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy reflect how paramount that this approach is. I will only take a couple of minutes to say that education through capacity building was what led the United Nations Office for Counterterrorism to develop and implement several of its current programs in some of our few offices across the world. You will later hear in more detail the outstanding work that our behavioral insights colleagues are doing through our Doha office. And as per the office here in Rabat, it was envisaged and established as the training hub for African countries to develop and provide national and regional capacity building assistance in the form of accredited training programs provided by national, regional, and international experts. The office has a specific focus of its mandates on the Sahel and West Africa regions, but expands its activities to other regions of the continent whenever there is a request from a member state or there is a concern and considered a strategic priority. The objective of the Program Office is to strengthen capacity of member states by developing of national training programs and counterterrorism training curricula aimed at creating positive impact on law enforcement, border security, and other agencies that are in charge of preventing and countering terrorism through the region. Our model and priorities focus on law enforcement agencies because it is critical that we realize how important it is for different state actors in charge of upholding the law while focusing on protecting their citizens can be educated in a manner that they can play their role to the fullest of their capabilities, going further than just being a strong arm of the state's apparel. Our strategy relies, in a nutshell, in 5 simultaneous and interconnected main priorities. Increasing understanding of regional and national level capacity, training needs, and priorities, leveraging on CTED's work throughout the regions. Establishing capacity to train counterterrorism and law enforcement staff at the national and regional levels. Enhancing capacity of national law enforcement officers developed in cooperation with national and regional training institutions. Enhancing core skills of trainers expected to oversee, deliver, and update counterterrorism investigation training courses. And finally, but probably one of the most important, support of international cooperation through informal exchanges of experiences and knowledge among practitioners from African countries and experts from law enforcement institutions worldwide, combining training and relationship building. We look at education and its transformative capability, and we are dedicated to provide accessibility because it is developed and implemented to eliminate existing barriers to capacity building training opportunities and resources. Practicality, because it is designed and it is delivered adopting a research-based, peer-reviewed, and practical-oriented approach. Specialization, and the most important, continuity and standardization, because it is designed and aims to be implemented, to be delivered in a way that facilitates the academic recognition of capacity building training activities as tertiary education, while also supporting the law enforcement training academies to develop around these curricula, their own national training programs with a long-term perspective. Easier said than done, that's for sure. But if I may build a case for its relevance, I believe we can all agree that education is the base for all sorts of knowledge. Excellencies, I would like to end these remarks with a quote from Malala Yousafzai, a Nobel Peace Prize winner and UN messenger of peace. With guns, you can kill terrorists. With education, you can kill terrorism. I believe she would agree if alongside with education, I add knowledge as one of the most effective weapons that we can have to kill terrorism. I thank you for your attention and wish you a very fruitful discussions. Thank you.